Hello, tis Noir Nerd, Noir Nerd, and I've got another devlog here for Papyrus 3D, and made some pretty good progress today actually, and basically broad progress on a lot of different things which will need some cleaning up and everything, but it's helped refine some of what I actually want to do this a bit more, having a nice session today and getting into the sort of creative coding groove, as it were. So anyway, without further ado, I'll demonstrate where it's up to now. Okay, let me just full screen this. So let me explain what's going on here. I'll just move me a bit as well, probably to the right. There we go. That's what we go there. So this big plane here, had this idea of adding like a map. I think I'm going to make this more of a turn-based, like RPG game thing. I keep on changing the spec, but my goal now is basically make something akin like Dungeons and Dragons with some ability to configure the different the systems somewhat. Not go over the top, but basically like they'll have a different. You can define different numbers of dice for rolling for combat. They have a combat system as well. Obviously, of course, because of that, I've started adding in enemies. So in the map JSON now, if you add a 9, then it'll plunk one of these guys there at the minute. Of course, it's all sort of hard coded at the minute with these enemies, but you can also this guy's a component. These enemies are components, so you can pass them different values. I'm thinking in general in terms of the actual structure more. Actually, also that's a door, so the ceiling's also created there. But yeah, so I'm basically trying to sketch all that out, like the actual room creation routine, and it's quite complicated actually, really, because even though I'm getting a 2D array and making it to this like a 3D representation of it, it's still quite complicated. There's some more enemies down here, and you can add all these like custom components, the different rotations and blah blah blah. I need to add a door opening mechanism actually, so like I need to add components for, say for example, slide door, so it slides up, slides left, slide right, slide down, rotate animation, so it rotates and opens the door. That'll be quite important. And obviously the thing I'm really thinking about a lot now is how do I get all this working in VR, because that is going to be a challenge. Like so I've got this idea now, for example, you see how I've got this map, which isn't actually a map yet, but basically if I can take that two-dimensional array which is in the JSON, transform it here, and then have it so that when the turn-based system's working, of course, you can click and then I'd move here, and then it just adjusts the. Now the actual adjustment of the player position is quite simple, but obviously I have to create an interface for the VR part of that, so that when you look for, I don't know, like 5 seconds, how does that work? So yeah, I need to think about that. Obviously, if I wanted to make this into also a D&D style adventure game creator, and it's only going to be, I'm not going to go too far with this. I don't want to make this like a commercial thing. I want to just make it as extendable as possible, so it gives someone a base essentially for creating that sort of thing. It is an open source project. It's GPL free, GNU free, so it's probably something someone can build on as well still. And basically all it's going to be is like I think now is that, unless I go crazy again, is it's going to give you a bunch of components out of the box for creating adventure games, really. So it still might involve a little bit of writing HTML, but it would just basically abstract away a lot of the difficulties that would otherwise be present in doing this sort of thing from scratch, which I'm taking on the difficulty of that. So it gives you a sort of framework. Like I said, I think it is more of a framework, really. It's not to say, I mean, the VR engine, like, it's a sort of mix, basically. But look at that. Obviously, I'm still in two minds about WSAD. But obviously, if it's going to be a turn-based thing, it will not be. WSAD will be irrelevant. Probably be better if I don't have WSAD in it as well, because then I don't have to worry about physics. I just have to have it so that, if you're in a combat situation, it moves to the correct position, correct animations gets triggered at correct points, yada yada yada. Obviously, for the entire combat system, I am just going to do something akin to a D&D one. So you have your character will somewhere you'll have to have like a strength and a constitution and all these, and a health, which then works out your health. So that would require a lot of stuff to work out, but with my basic understanding of how something like D&D works, it shouldn't be too difficult, right? So, for example, if you're in a combat situation and maybe you can switch weapons as well. I don't know. I don't want to make it too complicated for now. So I'm still using the environment component. There is in this config, this is set to indoor, so that's why there's that huge ceiling everywhere. So it applies this ceiling everywhere. That's actually added by the Papyrus code itself, because I've defined it as an indoor, given it certain settings. That is actually being created. That's not the environment component. That's just being created by the Papyrus code. I won't go into the code too much. It needs a lot of tidying up. It needs a lot of fixing, which I'm going through at the minute. But I am actually getting a bit more happier with this now, how it's proceeding. You got these. So for the walls, you got like the full height ones, then the half height ones. So it gives you a bit of sort of basic sculpting ability. I could even also add a quarter one as well, so you could do on some basic level like staircase or something. Make it. But yeah, I'm basically just trying to keep things going steadily, but not go too far, because that's what I did last time. And then I had to backtrack, and then I had to fix a bunch of stuff that I'd accidentally broken. But yeah, I was glad to get the monsters in there. All they are basically, the minute is if you put 9 into the array in the JSON, it just says, oh, I'll add a monster here. So it only has one type at the minute. I want to obviously add support for more than one type of monster. That's a given, of course, because maybe you want like 2 or 3 or 4 types of monster per dungeon. So it's turning into more of like a dungeon creator sort of framework / engine. But I think that would be useful to a lot of people, actually. Like, it does open up the scope for use for it up a lot more, so that there's just and I'm not saying like I cannot I'm not saying this is for D&D, but it could potentially be useful in those types of game scenarios. But obviously, if I was going to design it for something similar to that, there would have to be remote play capabilities, which I've not gotten to yet, nowhere near that level. And I'll just keep it single player for now, I think, because obviously you can do it with, it is possible to do that, but it's just a bit more complicated. You got to handle different sessions at the same time, people logging in, people dropping out. It's just a bit more complicated, but that will probably be a direction that could go in the future, so that you could, and it would be really cool if you could do that, because then you could have group sessions in VR potentially, using this, and then have turns, and then you move here, player one moves here, player two moves here, blah blah blah. But that's a lot further down the line. It's quite a lot of work. Just depends how far I get with everything, I suppose. But yeah, that's some of the texture issues need sorted as well. Like, you can tell there's some different textures here applied in different places, but sometimes some of the textures, like I've in the code I've specified a door texture, but it doesn't seem to load the door textures at the minute. For example, one of the bigger issues I've had with loading in like enemies or something, like, I know why this happens, because basically I need to add a floor model as well, and just below their feet when they load in. So you got, like, you can see here there's a geometry of a floor being added there. It's just a box in A-frame and very thin. But also I need to, if I'm adding in the space which will be occupied by characters, like here, it also needs to add a floor there. I had the same problem with torches. I think I took all the torches out for now. I was just testing things out, but yeah. And then there's lights need to think about. A lot of other things, but it is starting to feel a lot better. This is going to be quite complicated potentially, but basically I'm just doing the code that creates from the array the three-dimensional map, doing it on a plane, like flipped around, and then having it attached to the camera, which sounds simple, but there will invariably be complications that will come along with that. Like, I've started adding the script for it, but it's not quite there yet. Anyway, I'll leave that there. I'm Noah Nerd. Like and subscribe. I'll do more updates on Papyrus 3D. I've had quite a good run on it today, so I'm glad about that. Follow the project on GitHub if you find it interesting. If you've got any experience with actually doing this sort of thing, then feel free to contribute to the project, even if you want. I could do some help in some places. Alright, that's me. Bye.